The Michigan Man Podcast, episode 178. Where has Michigan's offense gone? And can it be fixed, or at least patched up in the next 3 weeks? If not, we could be in for a rocky ride and staring at the very real possibility of a 500 season.
Oh man, Euchre's been broadcasting for 27 years. I have never seen anything like this. They need 2 inches. Dennis Franklin, the quarterback, taking a long con from center. He hands off to Shuttlesworth 5, and it's down to the end zone. Touchdown! Touchdown, Dennis Franklin! Oh my God, Dennis Franklin fooled everybody. He fooled me. He fooled the entire Ohio State team. Kneeling is Larry Gustafson. Attempting will be Super Toe. Super Toe will kick the 30-yard field goal. It's kicked and sent over there. It's a tied-up ball game. 10-10. Okay. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Carter hands up. Carter's back. Oh my God. Carter scores. Look at those Wolverines. 95 Wolverines going in the end zone. Carter's got the pass in the air. It's done. Buford is going out of his mind. I have never seen anything like this in all my 40 years of covering Michigan football.
This is the Michigan Man Podcast. On GBMW Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Those of us who've been around the Michigan football scene for a few decades have never seen a Michigan offense struggle like they have the last 2 weeks. It is absolutely mind-numbing that we could post negative rushing yards in consecutive weeks. But it's happened. To say the offense is struggling is a massive understatement. Is there a workaround or a patch or a miracle cure for the struggles? No, there isn't. It's going to take some innovation, possibly even a short-term change of direction in offensive philosophy, and some toughening up in the trenches, real fast, if Michigan is going to have any chance of turning this around. On today's Visitors segment, our guest will be the radio play-by-play voice of Northwestern football, Dave Eanet. After that, on Michigan Gameday, we'll be joined by the editor of our Michigan Bible, the Wolverine magazine, John Borton. First off, though, some of my thoughts on my view from Section 17. It's been a rough 2 weeks for Wolverine fans. We can all agree on that. We've all been disappointed, angry, questioned the offensive play calling, and many of us probably overreacted in one way or another after another frustrating loss on Saturday. Should we be angry? Yes, I think so. Should we expect more from Coach Hoke and this program in his 3rd year at the helm? Yes, I think we should. Should we start to question if he is the right man for the job? No, I don't think so. Like so much in life, this season has not gone as we expected. I think how we and this Michigan staff and team respond to the disappointment will chart the course of the future. There are 3 games left to play. This staff and this team are keenly aware of what faces them in the next 3 weeks. Is it folly to think this team can compete with Northwestern, Iowa, and then Ohio State? I think many of you will say, it sure is. I don't think that's the case, though. This team has its deficiencies. We've seen them. They are aware of them, too. I'm hoping that they look at these next 3 weeks as an opportunity. It's gut check time for Michigan football. I think we all agree on that too. And even though this team is young, they have to put what's happened so far this season out of their minds. Every day, every Saturday is a new opportunity to grow, to learn, and to improve, and yes, to win. It can be done, and we need to come out Saturday in Evanston and seize the moment. I'm sure Northwestern feels the very same way. The Wildcats are in the midst of a 5-game losing streak and have been decimated by injuries. They too need a win in the worst way this weekend. Coming up next on our Visitors segment is the radio play-by-play voice of Northwestern football, Dave Eanet. So stay with us here on the Michigan Man podcast on GBMW Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine. With us on our visitor segment this week as we get ready for a trip to Ryan Field on Saturday, the radio play-by-play voice of Northwestern football, Dave Eanet. Dave, thanks for joining us.
Mike, good to be with you.
So, Dave, how was your bye week for once not having to be up in the booth?
Well, you know what, it was good from two standpoints. Number one, basketball started this weekend, so it enabled me to only worry about one game this week instead of two. But I also think the bye week came at a real good time for everybody associated with this program, given what transpired in Lincoln, Nebraska, the 2 Saturdays ago. And so I think from both the team standpoint, with guys so beat up, and I think just maybe taking a tough blow to the psyche last week, it was a good time to get a bye.
Well, absolutely. That was a brutal loss in Lincoln last week. And I saw that Coach Fitzgerald last week, when he was going over the injury report, said if Northwestern would have played on Saturday, there were 13 players that might not have been able to go and 7 others who are questionable. So it came at a perfect time, the bye week.
Honestly, Mike, I can't remember seeing a game in which more guys were taken off the field, and both teams, both Northwestern and Nebraska, but the Wildcats, who already had a share of injuries going into the game, really came out of that pretty wounded. And, I do think they would have found some bodies to put out there this past Saturday, but it would have been a bit of a challenge. And I think the varsity, as Pat likes to call them, didn't really do much on the practice field last week, so a lot of guys had a chance to heal up. And I would imagine there'll be some guys out for next Saturday, but I think for the most part, they're going to get a lot of the injured guys back.
Well, Dave, 6 weeks ago, Northwestern played Ohio State, and that was such a huge game there in Evanston, and it was such a tough loss. And starting with that game, the Wildcats have now dropped 5 in a row. Do you think losing to the Buckeyes began that spiral, or was it injuries that really is more of the real cause of the struggles?
Well, I'd like to think that it wasn't that, but there's really nothing to prove otherwise until they win a game. I mean, it all started with that loss to Ohio State, and it really started. It came down to one play in the fourth quarter, that 4th and 1, 4th and inches, really, where they got stopped. And to me, I didn't think they got a good spot, and a lot of people who saw it felt that way. But you can't let it ruin your whole season. And unfortunately, I do think that even though the players denied it, I do think it had a carryover effect the following week when they went up to Wisconsin. I mean, there was such a build-up to that Ohio State game. They had a bye before that game, and they played so well against Ohio State, and they were, able to come back in that game after trailing on a couple of occasions. And they had a double-digit lead in the second half on the Buckeyes, and played Ohio State as well as anybody has. And I do think that it kind of took a bite out of this team losing that game. That said, the Wisconsin game was far and away an exception to the rule for them, because they're not a team which has gotten blown out. They tend to be in every game. As you know, last year they only lost 3 games, and they had double-digit leads in the fourth quarter of all 3. So that game was really uncharacteristic. But the other games they've lost since Ohio State, aside from the Wisconsin game, they easily could have won those games. And I think that probably just adds to the frustration, knowing that this is a team which very well could be 7-2 instead of sitting here at 4-5.
I agree with you on that. And on the offensive side, the loss of Venrick Mark, though, that has really hurt. He is as good a back as I saw last year. He was so impressive. Is there a good chance he's going to apply for a medical redshirt, getting him a fifth season?
Well, I don't think anyone knows the answer to that yet, because I don't think that they have completely given up hope of him playing this year. But I think we're reaching that point, and I do think that there's going to have to be a decision made. But I don't think the decision will come till after the season. My guess is that if he doesn't play again this year, that he would apply for the medical hardship and try to come back next year. And I think it would probably serve him well in terms of a potential try at the NFL. And I think, obviously, the program would love to have him healthy for a senior year after this one is kind of, it's just been rough because going into the season, I think there's no question he was one of the top returning rushers in the Big Ten and one of the best players in the Big Ten. And to not have him, you take a key guy off of any team in college football, and you take two key guys for a good stretch of the season, both Benrick and Kane Coulter, and it's going to have an impact, and I think we've seen that.
Well, even without Venrick, the Wildcat offense still has Kane Coulter now back, Trevor Siemian at quarterback. Trayvon Green, I think, has done a really nice job at running back. Even with all of the injuries, there are really some nice weapons that this offense can throw at you.
Yeah, I mean, they still haven't. They haven't, for whatever reason, had the same efficiency on offense that they had last year and that they had through the Ohio State game. I mean, they've shown bursts, and they've had times where they've looked pretty good. They ran the ball on Iowa very well. They ran the ball on Nebraska very well, and in both those games, they had late drives. I mean, against Iowa, they were down 10-0, and they came back and tied the game and ended up losing in overtime. And then against Nebraska, they had a 21-7 lead, gave that up, and then got a turnover and took the ball in, kicked the field goal in the final 2 minutes of the game, and then lost on a Hail Mary. But clearly, they've played better offensively, I think, the last two games. The Minnesota game, the Wisconsin game and Minnesota game, I think were really exceptions to the rule for them. They did not play well for the most part against Minnesota. Wisconsin was pretty much a game they'd like to forget. So, maybe they've shown some signs, and I think they have the last couple of games of kind of rediscovering their identity, because they have not been the same team they were earlier in the year.
When I was looking over the stats for Northwestern this week, one that jumped at me, Dave, was the red zone efficiency. Efficiency rating of 96.8%, which is first in the Big Ten, second in the FBS. You look at that and say, how has this team lost 5 games in a row when they have been that efficient?
Well, I think, like all numbers, Mike, sometimes if you kind of look at numbers inside the numbers, they're a little more telling. You go back to the Ohio State game, they had the ball in the red zone 3 times and kicked field goals. And again, against Nebraska, look, they get the ball at the 8-yard line after the interception by Tyler Scott. On first down, Coulter runs it down to the 1. They have second and goal at the 1. They end up having to kick a field goal. If they score a touchdown there, then the most Nebraska can do is tie the game with that Hail Mary instead of win it. So, yeah, they've been good in terms of coming away with points because they have one of the best kickers, if not the best kicker in college football, in Jeff Budzine. And that's helped them, because otherwise those red zone numbers would not be quite as impressive as they may appear.
Our guest here in our visitor segment today is Dave Eanet, who's the radio play-by-play voice for the Northwestern Wildcats. Dave, over on defense, the Wildcats have 18 picks this year, which I think is right up there at the top nationally. They're 69th in rushing D, giving up an average of 168 a game. They're allowing 249 yards per game through the air and 26 points per game on the scoreboard. What's your take on this defensive unit?
Well, I actually think even though the numbers overall aren't quite as good as they were a year ago in terms of total defense, the rushing defense has dropped off a little bit this year, but I think that the most part, I think this defense has actually played a little better. They have taken the ball away a lot. They haven't come up with many fumbles, though, Mike. It's all been interceptions. They had 4 more in the game against Nebraska, and they've had 4 pick sixes. They had 2 by one player in their opener at Cal, Colin Ellis, and so they've done a pretty good job in terms of being opportunistic, setting their offense up in good field position from that standpoint. They've been hurt. There's no question by some injuries on defense. Going back to the opener against Cal, Daniel Jones starting the year in one of the cornerback spots, and he's the guy you may remember was involved in the tip play at the end of the Michigan game last year. Tipped the ball that was caught that set up the tying field goal for Michigan, and the Wolverines went on to win in overtime. But Jones got hurt in the opener, out for the year, so that forced him to start a redshirt freshman who has since been replaced by a true freshman at that cornerback spot, and Matthew Harris. And I think those guys actually played pretty well. Dwight White, the redshirt freshman, got off to kind of a shaky start, but he's settled in when he's played. And Nick Van Hoos at the other corner has gotten better as the year's gone on. You have certainly a known commodity in Ibrahim Campbell at safety. And I think the linebackers, all 3 of them are tackle machines and playmakers. And Damian Proby and Chichi Araguzo, who always seems to be around the football, and Colin Ellis. And then, they've been a little vulnerable at times. They've been pretty good against the run, as I mentioned, but they've missed Sean McEvely on the defensive line. He's come back the last couple of games and played a little bit. But they haven't been as prone to giving up the explosion play. Sounds a little strange to say that in a game, week after they lost on a Hail Mary at the end of the game. But aside from that, they did a pretty good job containing Nebraska in that game. And, they kept Ohio State without an offensive touchdown in the first half of that game in Evanston. So I do think this defense, even though the stats might not reflect it, is probably a little better than it was a year ago.
Well, Dave, last week Coach Fitzgerald said something I found interesting. He said his team was in a mourning mood, and he said that happens when you're not successful. When you go through a stretch that's included as many injuries as this team has gone through and really tough losses, do you think being mentally worn out is a big part of this 5-game skid?
I don't think so, because I think Wisconsin was the anomaly. I mean, it didn't make sense the way they played against Wisconsin. Oh, Wisconsin's pretty good. I think we've all realized that, but that game was much more lopsided than it needed to be. The Minnesota game, in my mind, was the big head scratcher, because I just don't think that they played up to their ability in that game, and I just think that they got going late. They scored with 2 minutes to go to make it a 3-point game, and then they didn't get the onside kick, and that was the ball game. But I think, against Iowa, against Nebraska, this team has played really hard. I mean, against Nebraska, they really, really battled, and I'm not sure that during this losing streak that's always been the case, but I do think it was there. And I just don't think that a team that's kind of been beaten down mentally would have played that way. Now, having said that, what nobody knows right now is what effect this Nebraska loss is going to have on them. And just as nobody knows what effect these last 2 weeks are going to have on Michigan going into this game. So I think, there's a lot of psychoanalysis going on, I think, for both these football teams going into this game. And from that standpoint, if you believe in that sort of thing, that how the effect that losing has on a team, I mean, I think it's very interesting to try to analyze which team might be in better shape going into this game just from a psychological standpoint, because I have no idea.
Well, I don't think anyone here has any idea after what we've seen really the entire season, but I would think if I'm a Northwestern fan, a visit from Michigan to Ryan Field this Saturday night, some folks might be thinking this is just what the doctor ordered.
Well, you know what, I think playing at home is what the doctor ordered, and I think, in a strange way, as tough as that loss was in Nebraska, I think they probably get a little confidence out of that. I mean, they've played the last 2 weeks in 2 of the toughest places to play in the Big Ten. I think you'd agree, Mike. I mean, Kinnick Stadium is always a tough place for visiting teams. Same story for Lincoln. And they came out of there and they lose in overtime and they lose on a Hail Mary. So, yeah, it's rough to be sitting here at 4-5. It's rough to have a 5-game losing streak, and you had such high hopes for contending in the Legends division. But on the other hand, I think they still feel like they can salvage something, get back to a bowl game, win a bowl game, as they did last year, and they've got to win 2 of the remaining 3 games to make that happen. Now from their standpoint, I'm sure they're thinking they can win all 3. And I think the fact that they've shown at times how good they can be, there's probably some validity to that. But obviously it starts with Michigan because, they're out of mulligans. Let's face it. I mean, they just can't afford any more losses, just because they had so much positive momentum going with this program now, and they don't want to let all that slip away. So this is, it's really a critical game, I think, for both teams. But I think Northwestern playing at home, knowing that they've got Michigan and Michigan State at home, and then Illinois on the road to wrap up the season. I think they still feel like they can get things together coming off a bye week and try to make a late run here. And, they've got a good record in November. I mean, they've always kind of labeled themselves Team November, and under Pat Fitzgerald, they did lose their first November game this year, but they're 12-7 under Pat in the month of November. So they've been pretty good the final month of the season.
Something has to give this weekend, as we all know. Either the streak ends for Northwestern or Michigan's downward spiral is going to continue. It might not be a marquee matchup nationwide, but to these two teams, this game really does have huge implications, doesn't it?
Well, it does. I mean, Michigan's already bowl eligible. Northwestern needs 2 more wins, and so that's huge. And look, I mean, I think that if there were a more painful loss than the Nebraska loss of 2 Saturdays ago, it would have been the game in Ann Arbor last year. I mean, that was a game that Northwestern figured they had won. They're running out the clock. They give Michigan good field position, a Hail Mary basically that's tipped. The guy was in the right place and just kind of missed on the tip, and Michigan's there to make a play and kick a field goal and then wins in overtime. So I think that game is one that's a very painful memory for him. So I think from that standpoint, that gives Northwestern some motivation going into this game. And I think, I think there are 2 teams that have had their struggles recently on offense. And so, I think that Northwestern's looking at the fact that they ran the ball well on Nebraska, and they looked at Michigan's struggle to run the ball on the Cornhuskers yesterday, or this past weekend. So I think from that standpoint, I think Northwestern feels like they can bounce back. It's going to be a great game, I think. I think it's going to be a very entertaining football game, and I think it's what you want in terms of having a lot on the line for both teams. And it may not be how we thought they'd get to this point, or what this matchup looked like it might be when the schedule came out, but I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
I think it's going to be a lot of fun, too. Another nice element to the game is that Northwestern is going to be wearing the custom Under Armour uniforms to raise awareness and support for the Wounded Warrior Project. I've only had a glimpse of those jerseys, Dave, but they really look pretty sharp, don't they?
They do. It's been kind of controversial, Mike. I don't know if you caught wind of that, but I guess some people have taken exception to it because there is some red streaks on red and blue on the uniform that people have felt it kind of looks like blood, and it's not really the look. If you get a glimpse of it close up, there's red spatter and there's this blue spatter also on it, and it's just kind of the design of the uniform. And in my mind, Northwestern's donating the proceeds. They're going to auction these uniforms off after the game, with all the proceeds going to the Wounded Warriors Project. So it's a case of no good deed goes unpunished. Chris has to create a little bit of an controversy, but I think it's going to be very cool. Something that Pat Fitzgerald has placed a real premium on with this program is, whenever they can thank the military, they try to do it. And he's got a former Navy SEAL who comes and speaks to the team during preseason camp every year and actually puts them through a Navy SEAL workout. So this is something that is near and dear to the heart of the people close to the program of the Wildcats. So I think that it's going to be a very cool scene, and it's going to be a good atmosphere. Northwestern, I think the atmosphere for the Ohio State game was rivaled only by the atmosphere for some of the games that the Wolverines have played in Evanston under the lights in recent years, and even going back to 2000, that 54-51 game. So, listen, this could be that kind of a game too.
Well,
so,
right.
It could be a very high-scoring affair. So I think it should be a lot of fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I think so too. Our guest on the show today on our visitor segment has been Dave Eanet, who's the radio play-by-play voice of Northwestern football. Dave, it's been a pleasure, and we look forward to getting you back sometime in the future.
Anytime, Mike. Good being with you.
Coming up next on our Michigan Game Day segment, we'll be joined by the editor of the Wolverine magazine, John Borton, here on the Michigan Man podcast on GBMW Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine. Back with us on Michigan Game Day this week, the editor of the Wolverine magazine, John Borton. John, great to have you back with us.
That's good to be with you. It's tough times, certainly for Michigan football, and I know everybody's a little bit frustrated and wants to talk about what's wrong.
Well, everyone has that question. We've seen a lot of it on the message boards over the weekend. Of course, all of the media coverage. John, in all of your years of covering Michigan football, have you ever seen a Michigan team, regress like this during the season?
Well, I don't know that I've ever seen a particular unit that just struggled so much when you thought that they had a chance to come along and improve during the season. And I'm talking particularly about Michigan's offensive line, which is really at the root of so many of the problems right now, from Devin Gardner's health and confidence to Michigan's defense even, because this offense has put the Michigan defense in so many bad positions this year. And you'd look at Devin Gardner being sacked 14 times in 2 weeks. I made a point that 14 sacks is more sacks than points that Michigan put up against Nebraska. So that's the thing that you just couldn't anticipate coming into this season. Yes, you knew that they were going to be inexperienced and young through the interior of the offensive line, but you did have the fifth-year seniors on either end. I know they worked hard in the off season to try and come along, but it didn't work out early with the people they had. They shuffled around, and now, you're playing a freshman and a redshirt freshman up there, along with a kid that came in as a walk-on, and it's very, very difficult. You expected one thing coming in throughout the first half of the season that would progress, and instead you're really at a crisis mode, and it's affecting everything.
Oh, absolutely. And you listen to fans on Saturday, everyone is asking the same question. They've been asking it for quite a while now. What can we do about this offensive line? We need to do something, but the reality is, what can you do at this point?
We have to take a look at it in the short term and the long term. You look at the classes that Brady Hoke's bringing in, and he is very determined to build on the offensive line. Some of these guys just have to come along. I think Kyle Bosch, for instance, will be an excellent offensive lineman down the road. Kyle Kalis, who has had his struggles this year, you getting thrown in there early. Eric Magnuson, and so many more. Patrick Kugler that we haven't seen yet, and some of these guys that a couple of years down the road are going to be very good. But that doesn't do you any good at the moment. You're looking at 3 games in a bowl game where you are absolutely in crisis mode, and I think that's where you have to go to some short-term things that look different than what they're doing, because it's almost like a run at this point, a straight-ahead run that's not a jet sweep or something else along those lines, is a wasted play. I think you're looking at maybe almost scrapping the under center game right now, because you're just being overwhelmed up front by defenses taking the cue from Michigan State and just selling out to bring people and put pressure on the quarterback. I think there are going to be some adjustments. There have to be some adjustments in terms of maybe a shorter, quicker passing game that gets the ball out of Devin Gardner's hands faster. We saw on Saturday against Nebraska some short throws that worked, some screen passes, a couple of passes to the sideline and looping Fitzgerald Toussaint out that worked in a big way. But those haven't been, we haven't seen those consistently. And like I said, I mean, it's a straight ahead run at this point is almost a wasted snap.
Well, you're right. We saw a bit of the quick passes and the out passes, especially during that first drive, which was so successful to open the second half, which sort of leads into this question. It's the second consecutive week fans and media have questioned the play calling of Coach Borges, and valid or not, do you think Coach Borges probably just knows something about his personnel that we don't, and he's just not able to say, we're scrapping the under center game and we're just going to go to more of that spread offense and doing what we did on that first drive of the second half?
I think he knows a heck of a lot more than I do and than a lot of his critics. I think he knows that any offense is very difficult to call when you can't block people.
Right.
And Michigan can't block people right now. I talked to a guy that's close to Michigan State after that game, and he made an interesting point and something that we should probably bear in mind. It's well, I won't give his name, but he said basically, I mean, he's watched Michigan State for a long time. He said once Michigan abandoned the run in that game, he said once any team abandons the run, he depicted as it's hunting season, and that basically means on the quarterback. There is nothing then that prevents teams from just ignoring the run. They're already ignoring the play action look because they don't respect Michigan's ability to run. But if Michigan doesn't ever continue to run the football, you are looking at a situation where people are just absolutely going to tee off on Devin Gardner in the way that has happened over the last couple of weeks anyway, but it could ramp up even more. And the look that I liked was the shotgun look, where it was predominantly throws. I mean, almost a New England Patriots sort of look where a run was just a change-up, with occasional shotgun draws, that sort of thing. I just don't think you can't make runs your staple, and especially first down runs right up the middle, which are absolutely going nowhere.
Something else, John, is that Devin just looks so indecisive right now, even more so on Saturday. He looks a step slower, and why shouldn't he be? He's been beaten to a pulp the last couple of weeks, along with the fact that the offensive line, that interior, is having such a difficult time. Don't you think also a factor is that Devin slowing down is limiting what Al Borges can do with that offense too?
Oh, there's no question. There is no question. That's a great point, because how big a factor was Devin's ability to scramble and run for yards through the first half of the season. I mean, he was, for some time there, he was Michigan's leading rusher. And every time that things would break down, he'd bail them out. He'd burst out and for a long run. He did it several times against Notre Dame in that signature win of the season, really. That's huge, and you can, as you said, look at Devin and know that he is hurting and that his confidence has taken a hit through this as well.
Well, given what's happened over the last 2 weeks, and you talked about this at the top a couple of minutes ago, can you see Coach Borges just, ditching, for the most part, the under the center game and the power sets, and just going with what we saw work in that first drive of the second half, spreading it out, the quick passes, maybe trying to get it to Fitz and some of the out of the backfield more often?
Well, I think that if you're Michigan staff at this point, you have to do whatever is necessary to try to win football games down the stretch, and it could very well include the sort of thing that we're talking about right now. It could include different wrinkles that maybe we haven't considered, but certainly you can't continue to produce these kind of results. 6 points at Michigan State, 13 against Nebraska, which has had a certainly not a well-respected defense over the course of the year. I mean, 200 yards rushing has been the norm against Nebraska, and Michigan can't go for anything. I think sacks eliminated it. The backs maybe made 22 yards. So you just have to understand, and as I said, any offense is very difficult to call when A, you're not blocking people, and B, you're not able to run the football. But you just have to, almost flip it on its head and go to a system, in my mind, where it's pass first and run, sneak a run in when you can.
Well, after the game Saturday, Coach Hoke at his post-game presser said 7 times that he needs to do a better job of coaching himself. Now, do you think that could possibly mean he's going to take more of the reins when it comes to the play calling?
No, I don't, because I think he trusts his offensive coordinator. I think he has him designated there for a reason. I think it would be a panic move for him to start calling offensive plays. He's in on the offensive planning all week long. They talk about what they want to do in big picture terms, all of that. But I do not think that he's going to make that move. Now, when he says he needs to coach better, a couple things are happening there. He means it because obviously the bottom line results aren't what he wants. But it's also his way of not talking about specifics of these areas and throwing people under the bus and criticizing and either assistant coaches or players. So you can rest assured that he's going to be throwing plenty of switches behind the scenes and doing everything he can to turn this thing and make it go forward over the next 3 weeks. But I don't think that is going to include any takeover in play calling.
Our guest here in our Michigan Game Day segment this week is the editor of the Wolverine magazine, John Borton, as we discuss we were going to discuss the Northwestern game, but just a quick look back at the Nebraska game. John, the defense had their issues, especially in the secondary on Saturday, but I thought the linebackers and the D-line were, pretty solid until that last drive. What's your overall on the defense Saturday?
I think the defense did a great job of holding Michigan in and didn't give up a point after that first quarter until the very end. But when you can't score, when you cannot build a cushion for a defense that is, like I said, limited a pretty decent offense to 10 points through 3.5 quarters, you put yourself in a position where you have that one big drive and you have a couple of breakdowns that are going to just absolutely take away your chance to win, and that's what Michigan had. I think obviously there are some issues there. You've got you had 2 new safeties in the game in Courtney Avery and Josh Furman. Your 2 starters were out for various reasons, and yet they had a pretty good game overall until the end. But you cannot. I know how Brady Hoke and Greg Madison think. They think if the opposition doesn't score, they can't win. So we should have won that game 13-10. But at the same time, it obviously doesn't always work out that way. I think in general, this defense is sound, but it is being hurt very, very badly by the offensive ineffectiveness and the continual short fields it has to defend.
John, what was going on with Blake Countess in the second half? I didn't see him at all, I don't think, in the second half. Was he hurt?
I'm waiting myself. We'll be talking to Brady Hoke early this week, and I have not heard exactly what the deal was with Countess in that game. It wasn't spoken about in the post game, and we'll see what Brady has to say about that today. But obviously, that's a big difference when he's not in the lineup.
Well, this week, even with Northwestern coming off a bye week, they are still a very banged-up football team. Coach Fitzgerald said last week that if they would have played on Saturday, 20 contributing players might not have been able to go, and another 7 were definite no-goes. So they needed that bye week. And who knows where they are psychologically after their Nebraska loss a week ago. So what we've got Saturday are 2 teams that desperately need to salvage their seasons, which should at least make for a very entertaining game on Saturday.
Well, there's no doubt about it. Two desperate teams, and one maybe even a little more desperate in Northwestern's case because it's trying to find a win some way, somehow. And at home, the concern if you're Michigan is the fact that Michigan State laid down a blueprint for really giving Michigan fits on its offense, and that is just to bring the house over and over and over again and dare Michigan to do something about it. And I thought it was an aberration given that it was Michigan State's great defense that was able to pull that off. But you fast forward it a week, and Nebraska was able to follow that blueprint and get some of the same things done with a defense that hadn't been any good all year, basically. So I think Pat Fitzgerald is a smart guy. I think you're going to see the same thing, and it's just okay, Michigan. Can you deal with it for a third, or can you not for a third straight week? And that's going to be the chess game. That's going to be the great challenge inside Schembechler Hall this week, is because you know what's coming. Can you find a way to deal with it?
And can we find a way to deal with it on the road, which is one of the mystifying things to me in the almost 3 years under Coach Brady Hoke. Why do you think, and I can't think of a good reason, why have we struggled on the road like we have?
Well, I think you've played some pretty darn good teams on the road. You certainly did last year, and sometimes it can come down to a play or two. You look at Ohio State last year, to be right there at the half, and then just to you caught a bad break in the second half in that Denard Robinson was injured. Not a lot of people knew that, but he couldn't grip the ball in his right hand, and you lost your most effective offensive weapon. And you get shut right down in the second half. At Penn State, you make a 33-yard kick, and you've got a nice win, and you're 7-0 going into Michigan State. Things just have happened on the road, and this team has not been as consistent. There's no question it's easier to play at home than it is on the road. There's so many things that go into that, from the crowd, the confidence, and how the crowd affects officiating and everything else. But point taken, Michigan hasn't gotten it done there, certainly for signature wins. And I don't know that beating a winless Northwestern team or winless in the Big Ten would qualify as anything close to a signature win, but Michigan needs a win any way it can possibly get it at this point.
Well, John, clearly this team's confidence is shaken, has to be shaken after what we've seen in the last couple of weeks. So, this really is the first crisis point in Brady's tenure this week, and how things roll out in the next 3 weeks, isn't it?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. This is he doesn't want to lose this season in terms of letting it totally spin out of control, and you finish on a losing streak, and because it affects everything from confidence to chemistry to, I mean, you've got recruits looking at this thing too, and to this point it's been okay. That first year was exceptional, above expectations. Took a little rock back last year because of various reasons, but you don't want it spinning into something where you're going to be negatively recruited at the end of this year, saying, oh, they're taking a step back.
Well, and that is the worry for the 2014 class. We haven't seen any of the verbal commits waiver yet, but if the unthinkable happens and Michigan drops these next three, do you see that having a damaging impact on the incoming class and maybe even next year's?
I think it just depends on the individual kids that they're after. I think what Michigan would point out is, look, we're still building here. Look at the people we've brought in. Look at the talent. Look at the fact that the vast majority of it are involved first and second year players. This is not. I mean, there are a lot of things that would be said, but there could be an individual or two that just decides, well, maybe I'll go a different route. That's what you have to try and avoid by what you are able to achieve and what you're able to show down the stretch.
Well, that makes the next 3 weeks very important for many, many reasons. Our guest on the show today has been the editor of the Wolverine magazine, John Borton. And John, as always, we appreciate your time and look forward to having you back on the show soon.
That's always good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Coming up next on Wolverine Quick Hits, our final thoughts as we wrap it up for another week here on the Michigan Man podcast on GBMW Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine. On Wolverine Quick Hits today, at his Monday presser, Coach Hoke said he heard the boos last week at Michigan Stadium. He knows they were directed at he and his staff, namely Coach Al Borges, and he says he understands why fans are frustrated because he is too. Brady said the goal for the team is to now go 10-3 on the season. This, of course, would mean winning the 3 remaining conference games, including Ohio State, and a bowl game. Coach Hoke said that Devin is sore, but he'll be ready to go Saturday, and overall the team is in good physical shape for the trip to Evanston. Kickoff Saturday is scheduled for 3:30 p.m. and will be broadcast on the Big Ten Network. I would like to thank my guests for this week, Dave Eanet, play-by-play radio voice of Northwestern football, and the editor of the Wolverine, John Borton. We'll be right back here next week to recap the game with the Wildcats and look ahead to another road trip, this one to the very loud and tough Kinnick Stadium, and a matchup with the much improved Iowa Hawkeyes. So we hope you'll be back for that. I also hope you enjoyed the show this week, and when you have the chance, please tell your friends and other Michigan fans to give us a listen. Until next week, I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Have a great Wolverine week, everyone. Stay positive. I can't tell you why, but I have good vibes about this weekend. And as always, take care and go blue. Thanks for listening to the Michigan Man podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. You can find us on the web at www.gbmwolverine.com. That's www.gbmwolverine.com. For audio posts or other fan feedback, please call our listener line at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Email fan feedback to the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. That's the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions Allen Park, Michigan. The Michigan Man podcast is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!